I'm Ron Howard. This is Grand Theft Auto. Grand Theft Auto is a love story. With cars.
And I love him, and that's why we're going to Las Vegas to get married.
I want my Rolls Royce.
This Rolls Royce isn't exactly mine. Want to pull over and fool around a little? Also, it's a comedy. Yeah! With car crashes.
But I am a superior driver.
And you know how reckless these young people can be. Couldn't call what Sam and I have done rape.
I know what I call it. Yeah, get down! Jimmy, I got something hot. I'm going to go with this. Put me on the air now. Break into the record.
Her parents will pay big bucks to anyone who can stop them.
You're just hovering up there like a lousy vulture hoping for a wreck.
Well, if you haven't, I'm going to report it. In the course of this calamitous chase to the chapel, Ron's caused the crashing of a $40,000 Rolls Royce, 3 Cadillac, Mercedes-Benz, Porsche, 7 cop cars, 4 trucks, a very cherry van, a lot of Lincolns, lowriders, 33 screaming street machines. And Ron wrestles his red-hot Rolls up on 2 wheels into a spectacular chickie run with a whirly-bird.
Don't worry, they'll pull off.
Don't worry, they'll pull off.
They're going to crash.
Look out, Vegas. We're coming in.
Grand Theft Auto, directed by and starring Ron Howard.
Well, hell.
The following is a paid advertisement. Really? A paid advertisement? Wait, the B-Movie Cast got paid? Yes, the following is a paid advertisement. This episode of the B-Movie Cast is brought to you by the estate planning services of Twyla Minear Brooks, attorney at law. Remember, when the zombie apocalypse comes, things will move pretty fast.
The body should be disposed of at once, preferably by cremation.
Well, how long after death, then, does the body become reactivated?
It's only a matter of minutes.
Minutes? Well, that doesn't give people time to make any arrangements.
Oh, you're right. It doesn't give them time to make funeral arrangements. The bodies must be carried to the street and burned. They must be burned immediately. Soak them with gasoline and burn them. The bereaved will have to forego the dubious comforts that a funeral service will give. They're just dead flesh and dangerous.
So don't leave your estate planning needs until the last minute, because you don't know when that last minute could come. Call Twyla Minear Brooks, attorney at law, at 859-351-2294. That's 859-351-2294. Remember, when you go, you don't want people saying,
"Yeah, they're dead. They're all messed up."
Twyla Minear Brooks, attorney at law, is licensed for practice in the state of Kentucky. Consult your local attorney for matters outside of the state of Kentucky.
We interrupt this program for a special news bulletin.
Hi, I'm Bill Mize, the creator of the Bill Watches Movies podcast, and we're interrupting your regularly scheduled program to ask you a few questions. Number 1, have you been feeling a little stressed these days? Number 2, do you need something to make you laugh? And number 3, would you like to just do nothing but relax and listen to a good story? Now, if you answered yes to the above questions, then I invite you to check out my show, Bill Watches Movies. It's a little bit Hollywood history, a little bit old-time radio, and a little bit Mystery Science Theater 3000, well, except we don't have any maroon janitors, wisecracking robots, or inept mad scientists. What we do have is a trip down memory lane as we take a very unique look at the B movies of yesterday and offer you something to make you smile, something to make you laugh, and something to make you think about what you would do if you realized that Bela Lugosi was working on creating an army of atomic-powered supermen next door. So join the rest of the gentle listeners and come on over to BillMakesPodcast.com or look us up on your favorite podcast subscription and transmission machine and subscribe today. I look forward to telling you a good story each month, powered only by my weird sense of humor and a shot of Woodford Reserve Double Oaked Bourbon. I hope that you'll join me on this journey. Take good care of yourself and those that you love. And hey, keep an eye on your next door neighbor. I mean, you never know.
Command mark. The time will be running at X-20 seconds. Mark. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, fire.
Spawned by the continuing decline and fall of society as we know it, and created on the second-floor spare-bedroom studio in the Piedmont of South Carolina. Podcasting on a shoestring budget and changing the world one freak at a time. It's the B-Movie Cast with your host, Vince Rotolo.
From coast to coast and worldwide via the internet, this is the B-Movie Cast, the podcast of unusual film and television.
Hi, guys, and welcome back to the B-Movie Clubhouse for episode 472 of the B-Movie Cast. Before I go any farther, I want to get our contact information out of the way. We love hearing from all of you, so we have a feedback segment devoted to your comments and suggestions, and this is how you can contact us. Option 1, pick up your phone and dial 888-936-0808. This is a toll-free number and a very easy way to leave a voice message. Option 2, you can make your own MP3 file and send it into bmoviecast@gmail.com. Or use your smartphone voice software and record a call, then just send that in as an attachment instead. Or option 3, if you're not into talking, you can just shoot us an email to bmoviecast@gmail.com. Our website is bmoviecast.com, where you can subscribe to the podcast. It's free, and there you can join us on the Facebook B-Moviecast fan page and letterbox. Also, you can play the contest by sending in your answer by email to bmoviecast@gmail.com with contest in the subject line. And check out the links while you're there, or buy a t-shirt. I currently have smalls to 4X's. If you want to help us financially, there's a donation box you can click on as a supporter on the Lugosi, Karloff, Agar, and the infamous Xanadu level through PayPal. Also, the easiest way to donate is to click on the Amazon bar on the right side of our homepage. This Amazon link will take you to Amazon.com to make your purchase. It doesn't cost you anything, and you can still log into your personal accounts when you get there. It's completely private, so think about us before you buy online. So now, through the miracle of modern technology and thousands of miles of wires, server farms, PCs, Macs, the Internet, and duct tape, we have our co-host from Lexington, Kentucky, author, editor, screenwriter, film producer, Nic Brown. He has a new website. It is authornicbrown.com. That's AUTHORNICBROWN.com. He is the author of the Werewolf for Hire book series, starting with Blood Curse. He's also selling a book in collaboration with his wife, Fiona, the B-Movie Cookbook. All of these are available on Amazon. He's produced 2 movies, Wretch and Loss Prevention. Both can be ordered on Blu-rays or DVDs through Amazon. He is also the producer of a 3rd film, the soon-to-be-released Fall of Usher. Our special guest host today is the ever-exciting and knowledgeable Beverly Gray. She left a doctoral program in American Lit to take a job with Roger Corman at the legendary New World Pictures. She edited his scripts, wrote publicity material, cast voice actors, and tried her hand at production. One highlight was coming up with a twist ending to the cult classic. Thank you for doing that, by the way. Death Race 2000. And later as a story editor in Corman's Concorde-New Horizons Pictures, she oversaw the development of 170 low-budget features. She's written 6 produced screenplays and played several cameo roles, in all of which she kept her clothes on. Good for you. Beverly's first book, the best-selling Roger Corman, an unauthorized biography of the godfather of indie filmmaking, made its debut in 2000. The softcover edition, tastefully retitled Roger Corman, Blood-Sucking Vampires, Flesh-Eating Cockroaches, and Driller Killers, appeared in 2004, and an updated unexpurgated third edition came out in 2013. You may remember our podcast of number 270, where Beverly talked about this book and her experiences with Roger Corman. So if you want to, go back and listen to number 270. She's also written the biography of a famous Corman alumnus, Ron Howard.
Mary, you're really having a hard time this week, aren't you?
It's been a long week.
Well, take a deep breath. Now, what's this dude's name? I know he's nobody anybody's ever heard of.
Ron Howard, From Mayberry to the Moon and Beyond, which was published in 2003, and it's now newly available as an audiobook. Her recent publication is Seduced by Mrs. Robinson, How the Graduate Became the Touchstone of a Generation. Beverly also teaches screenwriting workshops through UCLA Extension. Her popular blog, Beverly in Movie Land, and I'm sure that this will be posted on our website, www.beverlyinmovieland.com. It covers movies, movie making, and growing up Hollywood adjacent. And lastly, for the contest, she's offered a link to her new Ron Howard audiobook. It's the book Ron Howard, From Mayberry to the Moon and Beyond, published in 2003, but it's now available in audiobook. So she sent a code, and we will send that on to the winner with instructions on how to redeem it. So, on with the show. And then I'm going to shut up.
I was going to say, Mary, do you need to take okay.
Yeah.
So, I know the movie we're doing this week is Grand Theft Auto.
Yes.
And I know when you messaged me, you said that you were playing the Grand Theft Auto drinking game, which I believe I have the text here to say, let's see, what was it? Every time a car crashes, it's a drink. Mm-hmm. Every time there's multiple cars crash, it's 2 drinks. Mm-hmm. Every time a car, flips over, it's 3 drinks. And we decided that you would do 4 drinks if a car ever drove through a house. Mm-hmm. So,
I think I killed too many brain cells that night.
I was going to say, if you weren't drinking water, I really worried about alcohol poisoning for this film.
You should have warned me about that ahead of time. Wow.
Okay, Mary, it's called Grand Theft Auto.
Yeah.
You watch the trailer.
Yeah.
The trailer has a car. He's sitting in a demolition derby, and a car runs over his chair.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well.
Okay.
I can't say I get smarter as I get older. Let me put it that way.
Mary, you were fine. I just think it's funny.
It's a great drinking movie.
It's a great drinking movie, and as Fiona and I said as we were watching it, it is just a fun little film.
Yeah.
Period.
Yep. Well, as you've all guessed, this is a Nick pick. It's the 1977 American comedy road film, also called Chase and Crash Movies. It's Grand Theft Auto, starring Ron Howard and produced by the master of independent filmmaking, Roger Corman. It's a follow-up movie to the 76 Corman film Eat My Dust, also starring Ron Howard, a movie that, by the way, made $20 million on less than $1 million budget. That is like every independent filmmaker's dream. The ads promise that you'll see some of the world's most expensive cars destroyed: Rolls-Royces, MGs, Porsches, Lincolns, Cadillacs, and you will. They're crash flipped, blown up, piled on top of each other, and driven around and over everything in sight. It had the zaniness of Mad World and a really impressive roster of writers, actors, and editors. So sit back and enjoy. I had a good time with it. If you're not into this kind of movie, do what I did, turn it into a drinking game. It's 1 shot for every car wreck, 2 if they roll it, 3 if they blow it up, 4 if they drive it through a house.
That's what it was. Sorry.
Yeah. So I wouldn't advise doing that because you'll never make it through the whole movie. So, hello, Beverly. How are you doing?
Hi, that was quite an introduction. I think you two are definitely having a lot of fun, so I've got to join the party.
I promise I'm not drinking for the podcast.
I didn't say I wasn't, though, by golly.
Well, you have an impressive list of accomplishments. You've done a lot since the last time we talked to you.
I've been busy, yes. Trying to write books, trying to keep my head above water during a pandemic. That's always interesting.
Yes.
And teaching a lot of eager screenwriting students, which is really fun.
That would be. I wish I'd come out there and be one of them.
Okay, Mary,
actually,
what would
it's
your
an online class,
be?
so there you go.
Ooh, that's true. It is all online now.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, Mary, if you were her screenwriting student, what would your screenplay be? Come on, Mary, you work in a nuclear power plant.
Okay, yeah, okay.
That begs for giant roaches.
Yeah, giant insects, and yeah, that would be good. I still want to do the one with those little shrimp thingies.
What?
The shrimp things. The things that Vince and I bought for you that one time. You put them in water and they turn into little...
Oh, God, what are those? Sea monkeys.
Sea monkeys, yeah.
You want to do a movie with the sea monkeys?
Radioactive sea monkeys. Giant ones. That would be fun.
Okay. So what would we call it?
Work on The Nest, which is about killer cockroaches.
Yeah.
I was going to say...
It's one of my many Corman films.
I was going to say, the sea monkeys, I don't think anybody's done that, Mary. I think you could call Corman up and he would probably buy it.
Probably.
So...
I can't believe he's still going after all these years. That's amazing.
He is indeed. And he's 90 what? He was born in 1926, and I'm not very good at math.
95.
That's Roger.
Wow.
And you know my favorite thing about Roger Corman, I think, aside from the fact that he's only made one movie that lost money, that he'll admit. My favorite thing about Roger Corman is that he is so soft-spoken in all of his interviews.
Yeah.
You know, because I have known so many film producers and directors that are just, it's like they have a cattle prod attached to their backside when they're talking to you. And then you talk to Roger Corman, and he's just, oh, hello, good to see you. Yes, would you go over there? Please take your top off. You know, just very, very polite, very soft-spoken. I don't know. Beverly, is he like that when he's on the set?
He is pretty much always like that, unless he gets mad. But I once, a lot of people I've spoken to have talked to me about Roger Corman, and one was describing him at a film festival, and he said, there he was with his gold chain and the cigar, and I said, wait a minute, that is not Roger. That's definitely not Roger. I think he's been described as looking like a hip minister or a professor of English, and he really does have that aura. He is not only soft-spoken, but he speaks very carefully. I'm convinced that he worked up the speech pattern way back in high school when he took a class on elocution, and I think it was called radio drama. And I honestly do think that he learned how to talk in a very deep voice and phrased himself very carefully. And one of the delightful things about talking to Corman alumni, like, for example, Ron Howard, is Roger's very easy to imitate, and everyone does it. I have heard the Ron Howard version of the Roger Corman imitation. I've been guilty of doing my own Roger Corman imitation. You cannot help yourself.
No, Beverly, you can't help yourself. It's true.
Didn't he go to
that
Oxford
was my
for
attempt.
a while?
Yes, kind of a GI Bill sort of thing. He did spend a term at Oxford, yes.
Yeah. Wow. Surprised he didn't pick up an English accent while he was at it.
Mary, I've been to England too, and you don't seem surprised I don't have an English accent.
Well, your Southern accent just overwhelms everything. It's
what Southern accent? I don't have a Southern accent. I don't know what y'all talking about. I declare.
Yeah.
Excuse me while I finish my mint julep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, anyway, do you want to get the contest out of the way real quick before we...
I would love to get the contest out of the way real quick. Mary, what was the movie in the contest?
The Car from 1977.
The Car. Yeah, that was the movie it was. And I thought it was Laverne and Shirley looking at the picture, but that's beside the point.
Which one was The Car?
The Car was the one with the car in it. Okay, Mary.
Was that the Stephen King?
No, you're thinking of Christine.
Yeah.
This was one that came out about 5 years before that, and it was set out in the desert Southwest.
Oh,
and
with
basically,
the truck.
No, that was called Duel. But it was set out in the desert, and that was also set out in the desert. But this one was with that big black car that was driving all over the place, killing everyone.
I don't think I've seen that.
You have seen it, Mary. We did it on the podcast. Although, to your credit, you may not have been on the show with us when we did it. That was one of the early ones with Vince.
Yeah.
So that may have been pre-episode 100, now that I think about it.
Yeah, but he did make me watch all those.
Yeah, well, you watched it, you just don't remember it.
Okay.
But remember the women and the children took refuge in the graveyard and the car wouldn't go in because it was holy ground?
No.
No, don't remember that?
No.
Okay. Like I said, folks, we'll probably be doing the Car sometime in the future as a repeat.
It sounds good.
It is good, actually.
I ought to go back and listen to the podcast, I guess, maybe.
Okay, so anyway, back to the contest.
Yes. And by the way, I grandfathered in some contest winners from last cast because we posted the new picture late, and we felt bad for them because they did guess right. It was just the wrong picture.
I don't feel bad. Whatever.
I do.
You explain too much, Mary.
I have conscience. I have conscience here. Okay. Our first grand prize this week is the incredible audio book by Beverly Gray, Ron Howard from Mayberry to the Moon and Beyond. We're going to send the link to you guys, whoever wins, and will be email. And the winner is Dan Sample. So congratulations.
Well, hey, Dan.
You have won the audio book. And our first movie has been donated again by super generous Patrick Kelly. It's a DVD from 1990 called Hands of a Murderer. I know, Pat says this is a British made for TV movie. It's a Sherlock Holmes pastiche. It stars Edward Woodward as the great detective and John Hillerman as Dr. Watson. You probably know Edward Woodward as the star of the Equalizer TV series and also as the doomed police sergeant in the original Wicker Man. And Hillerman is famous for playing Higgins on the original Magnum P.I. And these are both the original TV series. It's not the new new versions out now. And the winner is... Okay, that would be Skip Jones. So congratulations, you have won the DVD. And of course, our last prize is the B-Movie Koozie. And the winner of that is Nicholas Stumpf. So congratulations.
Hey, Nick Stumpf got a koozie.
He got a koozie.
See, Nick is my Twitter fan because he never messages me through my website. He never messages me through Facebook, but he messages me quite regularly through Twitter, usually about the time we start watching Joe Bob's Drive-In on Shudder. So, there you go. You know Shudder, Mary. It's that service that you won't subscribe to.
I did for a month.
Yeah, whatever.
The movies are too scary.
Whatever. Well, it is called Shudder, Mary.
It's true.
It's not called Happy Fun Show movies.
Happy Days.
Yeah, that's it. Happy Days.
Happy Days is
that's
more
appropriate.
Yeah, that's more my style movie. Anyway, on with the movie.
So was that it for the contest,
Yes,
Mary?
That's it for the contest. I will be sending those things out as soon as I send last week's. Oh Lord, I still have to pack those up. Okay.
Once again, Mary, oversharing.
If it's in my brain, it comes out of my mouth. You should know that by now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No comment.
So, Beverly, how long did you work with Roger anyway?
I worked with Roger for almost a decade, but in two different eras, which makes it very interesting to compare. I started working for him in 1973 when I was an innocent, wholesome graduate student getting a PhD in English at UCLA. And all of a sudden I was ushered into the presence of a master and asked how I would like to make B movies. And of course that had been my dream all my life. So Actually I had no idea who Roger Corman was. I had no idea what these movies were. So I got an education really fast. And since we just lost Monty Hellman very recently, the first movie script I ever read, it was handed to me on my first day on the job. And I was just told, what do you think? Make some notes. So I made some notes on Cockfighter. And it was quite an adventure.
Wow. That would be overwhelming.
Wow. So what
I was pretty whelmed, I can
on?
assure you.
Yeah.
And then that was a fairly brief period, but a very lively one. I mean, Jonathan Demme was wandering around the office in his brown and white saddle Oxfords, which I remember vividly. And he had just made Caged Heat, and we were making The Arena, with Pam Grier, and Death Race 2000, of course, Big Bad Mama with Angie Dickinson, and a lot of nurse movies. So that was my first Corman stint. I did some cameos. I did one in Candy Striped Nurses. Of course, I was a nurse.
Well, that explains why you said you kept your clothes on.
I did keep my clothes on,
Yeah.
but boy, that nurse uniform was tight-fitting, I'll tell you. And then I thought I had gone back into academia for good, which is where I felt I belonged. And somehow, through a lot of twists and turns, I ended up back as Roger Corman's story editor in 1986, and I was there in 1994. And that was the big era of the kind of the home video explosion. And we were making 20-plus movies a year on a very small company with very small staff. So we were pretty busy. That was fun.
Wow.
So what do you think your favorite movie was that you worked on? Do you have one?
I'm not sure the favorite. Well, the early ones, like Big Bad Mama, I was very fond of because I worked production as well as on the script. So those are good memories. And in the later years, one of the ones that was the most fun was Carnosaur.
Wow.
That was the one we made to upstage Jurassic Park. And that was a great deal of fun.
Man. That's true. You guys did go from film to video, didn't you?
Oh, yes.
And that really ramped up production because it made it a lot easier, a lot faster, didn't it?
Well, Roger was always fast. And to give you an example, and this is before my time, but when Sputnik went up and everybody was talking Russians and space travel and all that, I'm dating myself, needless to say. And Roger made War of the Satellites. It was written in about a week, and it was shot in a couple of weeks, and then it was edited really quickly, and then they got it out there while people were still really excited about Sputnik. And in later years, Roger wanted to continue to do that, and it was harder because you couldn't hustle movies into theaters in quite the same way. So I remember once when the dictator Noriega disappeared and nobody knew where he was, and he actually hired someone over the weekend to write a script called The Hunt for Noriega. Unfortunately, midway through the weekend, Noriega turned up, so lost our opportunity. So it just wasn't quite as lively.
I can't imagine how many scripts he must go through back in those days. The other secret to Roger, at least in the later years, is in some cases we kept making the same movie again and again. You may have noticed. We made a movie that was written by a man named Robert King, who was not well known then, who was a nice young man who he and his wife Michelle did very well with The Good Wife on TV many years later. But his, I believe, first movie for Roger was something called, Blood Fist. And it took me years to realize that he had pretty much cribbed the entire plot from a Steven Seagal or Van Damme movie. But it was the usual thing where this nice young man, his brother has been killed in the ring. And this is the kickboxing ring because it was the era of kickboxing. Don the Dragon Wilson was hired as the lead to find out who killed his brother, and there's the wily Chinese mentor, and eventually he discovers, I don't want to give the plot away, but you already know. They end up mano a mano, but since it's kickboxing, you could say it's fudo a fudo, right? Of these two antagonists fighting to the death in the ring. Well, that did pretty nicely for us, and it did so nicely that Roger decided a couple of years later that, we had a slot around Christmas time at our little studio, and why didn't we make another version of this, only instead of filming it in Manila with a lot of exotic locations, why don't we make the L.A. down and dirty under the freeway version of this kickboxing tournament? So I was asked to write that, and fortunately I could mostly take Robert King's script and just sort of make enough changes so that it was theoretically a new movie, but basically with the exact same plot. And that was called Full Contact. And then that did well, and then a few months later, someone got the bright idea that we should set our movie in outer space. So, a few more changes, and this time it was called Dragonfire. And then about 6 months after that, they decided to do the female version. And Kat Sassoon, and it was called Angel Fist. So we got 4 versions of this, basically the same story, just one after the other. And Roger was not shy about doing that. That explains why he has like 416 titles under his belt.
Oh, many more than that. Many more than that. And occasionally they do something creative, like the love triangle with 2 men and a woman would be flipped so that, the roles would be kind of reversed, so you'd have 2 women and a man, but it was basically the same story. I mean, this kept happening.
No, that works. Hey, if it makes money and people like it.
Yeah?
Yeah.
No, and he had a real talent for making films that people would go and watch.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I have seen more Roger Corman films than I can count, and I haven't seen all of Roger Corman's films by any means. And,
well, I suspect there are some you wouldn't want to see, but then again.
Well, you're saying that to the wrong person, I think, Beverly. I take a sadistic pleasure in watching some of the worst films ever made sometimes.
Oh, well, in that case, you would be very, very happy. But occasionally I'd run into some snobbish person and I'd say I'm Roger Corman's story editor, and they would say, oh, Does he have stories?
Okay. And see, I take offense to that because Roger Corman may have he may have redone some of his films, but at the end of the day, you have to be creative just to come up with different ways to tell the same story over and over again and get people to pay money to see it.
That's true. Yeah.
You know, so and plus Roger Corman just seems like such a nice guy. I get mad when people diss him. So,
well, I've got to jump in here. When people say to me, "Oh, Roger Corman, such a nice man," and my answer is always, "He can be." Wait.
Yeah, well, I guess you don't have an empire like that and not step on a few toes.
No, he's a complex person. I think there are really good sides to him, and there are some not so nice sides to him.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, how did you end up writing the end of Death Race 2000 with Paul Bartel?
Oh. Yeah, Paul Bartel. I don't remember it clearly, but my favorite colleague, Francis Dole, with whom I worked for many, many years, insists that I did think up the ending, so I'll take credit.
Okay.
We just didn't quite know where the script was going. Actually, that script was pretty interesting because at the beginning it was a short story by Ib Melchior called The Racer. And the first person we had in to write a screenplay was A.E. Van Vogt, whom I'm not a science fiction person, but I'm told he was pretty big in his day.
Yeah, yeah.
And he just didn't quite get it. He said, oh, well, nobody could really just run over people for points, so we're going to have this machine in all the cars, and it's going to scramble people's brains so that they don't quite know what they're doing. And we all said, no, that doesn't seem like the movie that we had planned to make. And then
that would have been
eventually went to Chuck Griffith, who, of course, would write anything. Chuck was a wild man, and with a lot of input from Paul Bartel, the wonderful Paul Bartel. But they needed an ending, and to me the ending was so obvious what had to happen at the ending.
Wow.
So I said it, and they said, aha, and that was it.
Wow. How did they talk Paul Bartel into being the bridegroom in this movie?
I think it was very easy to talk Paul Bartel into showing off of it. He loved doing things like that.
Oh, okay. Wasn't he the guy in the back of the car that was the newlywed?
Okay, wait. We were talking about Death Race 2000.
Oh, no, Mike.
And then you jumped over to Grand Theft Auto, and I was like, he wasn't the bridegroom in Death Race 2000? Okay, Mary, I apologize. You just gave me a tiny, tiny aneurysm, though.
Oh.
And so...
Well, welcome to my world.
It's okay. But by the way, I do have to say I absolutely love Paul Bartel as both an actor and a director.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, he always steals the show when he's on the screen.
Yeah.
And I was just watching the special edition of Piranha. And he is the really, really uptight camp, I guess the head of the summer camp, where the main character's daughter is during the film Piranha, and he's just so excellent in that. But yeah,
it's really quite wonderful, and I was very, very fond of him. But I didn't know Mary Warrenoff at the time, but I met her years later, and she said that Paul used, of course, they played a married couple in Eating Raoul and in other things as well, and Paul used to always introduce her to people when they were at a party or something as his wife. And I started saying, I'm not so crazy about that. So he apologized. So the next time around, it was time to introduce her. He introduced her as his ex-wife.
Ouch.
It sounds like he had the same sense of humor off screen that he showed on screen, so...
He
I
did,
like that.
and he also loved to eat, which makes me very amused that he made, of course, Eating Raoul, because being at a meal with Paul Bartel was memorable, let me tell you. He savored food. He would get emotional, for almost orgasmic over good food.
Wow. That would be fun.
That is fun.
So, were you with New World Pictures when they did this movie?
Oh,
Grand
this
Theft
one, no.
Auto?
No, this
Grand
is
Theft Auto.
between my two eras. But fortunately, when I started working on the Ron Howard book, I knew Alan Arkish, who was the second unit director, and also the clown with the ice cream fan.
I can't believe how many extras and people working on the movie ended up in the movie.
Well, first of all, it's fun, and secondly, in the case of Ron Howard, that happened in his early career. He and his family knew everybody, and everybody loved the idea of helping them out. I mean, obviously, several of the Happy Days people were in the Grand Theft Auto.
Yeah.
You saw Marion Ross and
Gary Marshall. Yeah.
Garrett Marshall, yeah.
Yeah.
People, loved that family and were happy to help and got a big kick out of it.
That's amazing.
Well, I kind of thought it was nice that it was such a family affair for it. I mean, you had Rance Howard, you had Ron Howard, you had Clint Howard, and it was cool.
His wife and his grandmother did the catering on it.
Oh wow!
No, his wife, Ron Howard's wife, Cheryl, did the catering, and that's one of my favorite stories. She wasn't assigned to be the caterer, but they were out there in the California desert, and you're supposed to feed people decently when they're on location, but this is a Corman budget we're talking about, so the food was just it was cheap takeout hamburgers, and everyone was just ready to mutiny. And Cheryl apparently had a grandmother or some relative living nearby, and she could commandeer the kitchen, and she loved to cook. So she started catering for the whole set, and she did this for quite a length of time. Alan Arkish, who I mentioned, was one of the people who talked to me about this film and said, boy, that she made great enchiladas, and just everything was terrific. And one day, as they were all sitting out there, however many, 70, 80 people in the crew, scarfing down this food, and somebody comes up with a National Enquirer type tabloid, and it says, Ron Howard's marriage is on the rocks. He and his wife had nothing to do with each other, and everybody thought this was hilarious because here she was in there pitching.
Well, she was in the movie too, wasn't she? There was a scene.
She's always in his movies. She's in every single one of his movies, just kind of as a good luck thing. And she's not always easy to spot, although she's very redheaded. Ron Howard turns out redheaded children too. 4 kids, and they're all redheads.
Wow. That's great. It's great that they've been married and have just like a normal family.
Yeah,
this business.
I'm sure your listeners know that their daughter, who's done quite well, is Bryce Dallas Howard, and another daughter, it's one of the twins, either Jocelyn or Paige, I think, has done a little bit of film work. But they're all involved, and they always have been. Ron's parents. Well, one of the stories I like best about Grand Theft Auto is that maybe I should start with the origin of how this project started. That's easier to do it in order. Okay. Chuck Griffith, the author of Death Race 2000, and before that, the author, of course, of Bucket of Blood and Little Shop of Horrors and a lot of other weird Corman stuff. Chuck was going to be making his directing debut, writing and directing, and this was the era of the teen car crash movies. And he wrote a script called Eat My Dust about a young guy who's into fast cars, or he's into a girl who's into fast cars, and it's a kind of almost hillbilly down home kind of car crash movie. And Chuck asked around. He asked his stepdaughter and said, "Who should be in this movie?" And she said, "Oh, well, of course it should be Ron Howard, who was very, very popular at that time from Happy Days." Mm-hmm. He realized that this would be great, but of course Ron Howard was a pretty major star who could call his own shots. This wasn't the guy who needed to make a Roger Corman movie. But Ron Howard, who was quite young but was also quite shrewd, he was going to film school, USC Film School. He was about 21, 22 years old. When he heard about this opportunity to be in the lead in a Roger Corman car crash movie, he told his agent to stay home. He said he wanted to handle this personally. He went in to see Roger with a script under his arm, and he said, "Roger, I will consider doing this movie for you, but in return, I want to have the opportunity to do this script that I have written." And it was a little, I haven't read it, but I know it's called "'Tis the Season," which was about a young man, in college and sort of at Christmas time. And Roger was not at all interested in "'Tis the Season," but he made a deal, and Roger has been known to do this with a lot of people who have name value. He said, "If you star in Grand Theft Auto, and if you star in Eat My Dust, and it does well, I will give you the opportunity to write a story treatment on a subject of my choosing." And I wrote it down here. $1,500 for a story outline. And if I like it, then I'll pay you $5,000 to write the script. And of course, it's got to be a movie that stars you. And if all of those conditions are met, then you can direct it. So Ron Howard thought this was a good enough deal for him because he had been dying for years, really, for decades. He wanted to be a director. He knew as a pretty young kid he wanted to be a director. He liked taking charge of things. And he knew that this wasn't the world's greatest opportunity, but it was something that nobody else would give him. Because all these studio heads respected him as an actor, but they thought it was kind of cute that he wanted to direct. They were not interested in really helping him do that. And here's a guy who would. Mm-hmm. So Eat My Dust came out. It did really well. So Ron Howard started trying to think what he could write that Roger would like. And he came up with everything he could think of, including movies about snuff films and silly comedies and heavy dramas and everything. And Roger kept saying, no, I enjoy your describing this, but it's just not what I want. And finally, Roger decided what he wanted was another teen car crash movie. He'd done well with one, it was time to do another one. So Ron went home, and apparently there was something he and his father had been messing around with, and he retooled it. Roger said, "Fine, let's go." So there they had their project. And one of the things that I love about it is the fact that Ron, somewhat uniquely, I think, among hot young men in Hollywood, was quite willing to work with his dad and quite willing for them to be equal partners in this operation. And one of the people I talked to is my friend Francis, whom I've mentioned, who was the story editor on this project and who worked with the two of them. And I said, well, what was the relationship? Who was in charge? Was one of them sort of the point person? She said they were absolutely a team. They knew what they wanted. They knew they were a team. They agreed with one another. And it was a very easy and comfortable working relationship.
Wow.
And of course, then it had all the elements that we know and love, all the car crashes and the Rolls Royce, and a lot of familiar people in a lot of roles, and just action a mile a minute. And the whole family plugging away at it.
Yeah.
One thing Ron Howard was concerned about, I mean, this was his first movie, and he knew that he was actually he turned 23 just as the movie got off the ground as he started production. And he knew that he was actually even younger than Orson Welles when he made his first movie, but he also knew he wasn't making Citizen Kane. So.
Wait, this wasn't Citizen Kane?
It was the Citizen Kane of car crash movies.
Well, see, I thought the Rolls Royce was called Rosebud. So, oh, sorry, spoilers.
So, obviously, they made a movie where he could do all those lovable Ron Howard things, and where there would be lots of car crashes. And Ron at first was somewhat worried that he was young. Maybe all the New World Picture people wouldn't respect him or wouldn't listen to him.
Mm-hmm.
And Alan and some of the other folks who were involved with it said he had no need to worry. First of all, they were all young too. They were all new too. And here's a guy who's been in not one but two really major hit TV series, has made a lot of movies, and is an extremely nice guy. How could they not respect him? Aww. So it was, I'm sure it wasn't an easy shoot. I mean, they were piling up. I think one day they did 90 set of something incredible. They, with Corman, you didn't mess around. You didn't try to have too many takes. You didn't try to be a total perfectionist. You couldn't. I mean, you had about 3 weeks to shoot this movie.
Mm-hmm.
First, second unit going simultaneously. And one of my absolute favorite stories about this, and this was told to me by Alan Arkish, the second unit director, who had come out of Corman editing and has since won TV Emmys for some of his work.
Yeah.
Alan said that Ron had a lot going for him, aside from the fact that he was a nice guy and that he had a lot of experience within the industry. He also had the capacity to be extremely focused and extremely organized. And this is a movie that requires you to be extremely focused and extremely organized. And Ron and Alan had a meeting that lasted several days where every single beat of the production was laid out. They were going to be shooting second unit and first unit simultaneously. They had to coordinate. They had to have everything in line. They had to know what they were doing. They had to have it all storyboarded. And he was good at that. He was really, really good at that. And to give you an example, at most major productions, if you have a costume and the people in this movie do not change clothes, so they're pretty much wearing the same outfit the whole time. But of course, they're all getting into all kinds of trouble, and they're getting dirty, and and you had the one costume for each of them. Now you're shooting second unit, and you need to have somebody else, perhaps maybe a stunt person, wearing Ron Howard jacket or his girlfriend's bell bottom. You had to have all of the accoutrements so that you could go back and forth. So I loved the way Alan put it to me. He said, Ron had it all worked out, so you always knew where the pants were going to be at 4:00.
Wow. That would be so confusing and so, chaotic to me.
You'd think so.
Yeah.
Just the number of cars, the number of stunt people, the number of effects. But as things went, it went pretty smoothly. Because with Roger, it had to go smoothly. He left you alone if it was going smoothly, so that's what you wanted.
So you didn't want Roger to show up on the set, basically. If he wasn't directing it, you didn't want him to show up because that meant stuff wasn't going well.
That's exactly right. Plus, Roger occasionally would get curious ideas, and I don't know if this affected this particular production, but Roger would occasionally get an odd, usually money-saving idea that usually you didn't like. Like, for one film, he decided that there shouldn't be dolly tracks, that laying down dolly tracks took too long, so they were out. So you'd have to kind of hide equipment from Roger so he wouldn't know exactly what you were doing.
Wow.
Now, I was reading that Ron Howard, because he was taking on dual roles in this, he was acting, but he was also directing. And I read that he tried to get all of his scenes, which 90% of them are him sitting in the passenger seat of a Rolls Royce.
Right.
So, but he tried to get all of his scenes where you see him and not his jacket and his red hair, as you pointed out. He tried to get all of those filmed in the first 2 days of production so that he could be out of the car and directing the rest of the film.
Yeah.
You know, it's like a mosaic, isn't it? Making a movie. It's not at all like stage where, you know, there's a beginning and there's an end and it goes in order.
Yeah.
Do it in any order, and if you're and he's certainly a better than competent actor, to know what mood you are in, what's going on at any given moment, so that when you put it all together, there is an arc, there is a flow. And I should mention that aesthetically, because it's something that really hit me when I watched the movie this time, which is that through 90% of the movie, and maybe it's for practical reasons, but I think it's also for character reasons, he's the guy in the passenger seat. The girl whose name eludes me right now is driving.
Nancy Morgan?
Good driver.
Nancy Morgan.
Nancy's the actress, but I forget the character.
Oh, you mean the actual actor driving, or the actual stunt person driving. My bad.
And then finally, just when you wonder what's going on with them, they actually have a real fight at the end of about an hour. And there is that moment of tension where, well, maybe they won't go to Las Vegas, and maybe they won't get married. Maybe they don't really like each other now that the chips are down. Mm-hmm. But of course, we get past that. They kiss and make up. And from that point on, he's in the driver's seat, both literally and symbolically.
I hadn't realized that.
That is a very keen observation. And, you know, it's funny because when I was watching it with Fiona, one of the things I noted was that you know, the character, Nancy's character, Paula Powers, you know, she's the one that steals the car from her father, and she's the one that is driving for most of the film, as you mentioned. And it occurred to me that technically she probably wasn't stealing it because it was in the family, as it were, and that car was never reported stolen.
Yeah.
So, but every other car in this film is reported stolen, and that's the thing. That's this running joke in it, that everywhere you go, somebody's stealing a car.
That was so funny.
And everybody parks with the keys in the ignition, which is very nice of them.
Well, you know, it's wonderful of them to do that, and and I think this movie shows why you shouldn't do it. It also tells me that in the reality where this movie took place, there were a heck of a lot of felons after that whole thing was resolved, because that was a lot of Grand Theft Auto that was going on.
But I'm doubtless giving the film more credit than maybe it deserves. But hey, there is, you know, real characterization there, and the couple, these young lovers are interesting. She's in rebellion against a very rich and very snooty father who wants to run for governor, and we know wackos like that don't run for governor in California, right?
Oh, never.
I assume you've seen the news about some of the candidates in our current recall election, Caitlyn Jenner being one.
I was going to say, are they going to keep the reality show running if she becomes governor? Or, you know?
Well, we have elected Arnold Schwarzenegger in the past, so there's no telling. But I would hope, with all the strength in my being, that we don't have to deal with it.
That would be a very. I think that's going to be a very interesting primary for that runoff election. Let's just, I guess recall election, not runoff.
It's not a primary. It's what if he is voted out on the same ballot, you have to say, okay, if he's voted out, who will be voted in?
Oh, wow. See, I've never had to deal with that. So now, good luck, California.
Yeah, exactly. Good luck. But to go back to this nice young couple, she's the one who's scheming and grabbing car keys and knows what she wants. And the Ron Howard character is sort of the nice guy who in some ways seems to be going along for the ride. And he's saying, hey, can we just pull over and fool around a little? And she's got her goal. Mm-hmm. You kind of are waiting for the moment when this environmental studies major kind of takes charge, and he definitely does. Yeah. The other thing about Ron Howard movies is I think he was a little tired of being the nice guy on TV, and maybe the people who are showcasing him are a little tired of it too. So he always does a certain amount of swearing and sounding a little more worldly wise than Richie or Opie ever did.
I like the fact that they named him Sam Freeman because he was free.
Yeah, I think so.
But his girlfriend and her father's name are Powers because they are very powerful people.
I'm sure that is not accidental.
Yeah, there was probably a little.
We have Collins. There. What's his name? He's got a funny name.
But Hedgeworth. Collins Hedgeworth.
Collins Hedgeworth. Yeah, you couldn't get a more waspy name if you used a random generator.
Yeah. Hedge funds, money worth. Yeah.
Yeah.
That actor was really good too. You wanted to smack him. And I love at the end of the movie when he was sitting there next to his mom, and he had that temper tantrum, and he was just, his legs were flopping up and down. He was crying, and I loved that. That was so good. That was perfect. And Marion Ross is just standing there next to him.
Yeah, and Marion Ross, it was fun seeing her play because she always played everybody knows her from Happy Days, as Richie's mom. Yeah. And she was like the quintessential mom from the 70s, even though the show was set in the 50s. But she was kind of the idyllic mom. Mm-hmm. And then you see her as this spoiled rich woman whose whole goal in life is to save her poor booby baby that's
son.
It's fun seeing all these people play these different roles.
Yeah.
I should also, since we're talking about some of these characters, the real Don Steele, who was definitely a radio personality in the LA area, and he was also in Death Race 2000.
Oh.
He loved to play those fast-talking, wacky, crazy DJ guys. He's, what do they call him? Curly
Q Brown.
Yeah.
And I got to say, real Don Steele was one of my favorite sub-characters in Death Race 2000 because he played the TV announcer Junior Bruce in that.
That's right.
And then he was Curly Q Brown in this, and he did quite a few films with Corman actually. He also did, I think, Rock and Roll High School. He was in that too. So
that makes sense.
Yeah, he had such a good voice for that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I will say this, if he had not made it as a DJ, he would have been a used car salesman.
He had the patter down. Yeah.
He had the look, and he would have been a disco used car salesman. That's how I would imagine him. So.
Yeah.
One of my favorite characters, and also, since I worked on Big Bad Mama, I spent a lot of time, with scenes of kind of phony preachers, and we've got one in this movie too. So a lot of the elements that Corman people enjoyed show up in this film.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I read somewhere that the people on the old people bus, that was his aunt and her friends. That was Ron Howard's aunt.
It's all possible. I don't know.
That would totally make sense.
Okay. Yeah, it was Ron Howard's Aunt Dot. And most of the people on that bus were her friends. They were senior citizens. They were her friends. He's got a whole family in there. He's just going to put everybody in.
Well, again,
Speaking
this
of
was a
senior citizens, one thing Ron told me when I interviewed him about his Corman debut was there used to be a place called Preview House where people could come and they would show movies. It's a way of surveying the potential audience, and I know there's a fancier term for that I've forgotten. Market research, but you'd have little dials and things, and you could push you liked something or when you didn't, and it always seemed kind of unlikely to me in terms of reliable, because if you really liked something, would you be really turning dials or would you be paying attention? But Roger, you'd recruit these people, and I guess you'd give them some small stipend to come into Preview House and see stuff. But Roger didn't pay the extra amount, which sort of gave you the kind of target audience you were after. So, who would come? It would be little old ladies with nothing to do. Blue-haired ladies is the way Ron described them to be. So they're watching this movie and then turning their dials, and Roger very seriously got all these graphs and charts out of that experience, and then he went through the film with Ron, pointing out what people had liked and what they hadn't, and where they were engaged and where they apparently were less interested. And Ron thought it was all a little weird, but still saw the value in shaping the movie based on the consumer and the consumer's predilections. And he said, as they went through that, he kept cutting and cutting and cutting. He could really see that the movie was getting more and more appealing to a general audience. So his own methods over the years have been a little more sophisticated, but he still believes in running the movie by a bunch of people who've been assembled for that purpose, just to decide what should stay and what should go.
Wow. Did you get to meet Clint Howard and Ron's father Rance while you were there?
Unfortunately not. No, wow. I didn't meet them. Clint, I understand from a neighbor of mine, actually said he played golf with him, so of course I asked a lot of questions. And he said Clint was very nice and rather quiet, but Clint obviously has a strongly rambunctious side, and over the years, went through some periods where he wasn't the wholesome guy that the family wanted him to be. Yeah, Ron has always been a person in control. I mean, that's just been him from the beginning. Everybody agrees on that. And Clint was the live wire.
The black sheep of the family.
A bit, and to the point where they had to stage an intervention and get him out of some jams. But he seems to genuinely enjoy, because he's done a lot of Roger Corman movies, rock and roll high school kinds of movies, and he seems to enjoy playing really perverse characters. So there's that sort of bizarre side to him, which he seems to greatly relish. In contrast to his very rather sedate brother.
I read somewhere where Ron directed Clint in like 16 different films.
I wouldn't be surprised. He's in. He's got a nice little part, but an important part in Apollo 13 as one of the guys in ground control. And there's at least one film where he and his dad, they have a scene together in. There's a Western that Ron Howard did that I'm not a big fan of, but They did have a scene, and that one didn't appeal to me much, but he often will give Clint sort of goofy opportunities when there's an occasion for them. Yeah, they are close, but they're very different. And one thing, Chuck Griffith said that when he was directing Ron in Eat My Dust, he was invited over for dinner by the family, and he couldn't say enough nice things about them. He said it was like Walt Disney meets Martha Stewart at their house. Just everything about the home, the welcome, the food was just as warm and cozy and friendly as it could possibly be. And then he commented that how the parents, Gene and Rance, were so proud of their sons, but did a wonderful job of not holding the one above the other because of his far greater sense of accomplishment.
Yeah.
That they really, and everything I've heard about them is that they were wonderful parents.
Oh, man, that's great.
And when you're raising a kid who becomes famous at age 5, as Ron Howard did, and he learned to write so he could sign autographs, and I mean, it's that kind of achievement. The parents are both actors, and Rance never got anywhere near the success that his son did, but the family was in balance. They weren't leeching off of Ron's earnings or kowtowing to him. They understood what family life was all about. I give them a great deal of credit.
Yeah. Well, Michael Worth is a friend of ours, and he just directed Rance's last film, Appleseed, in 2019.
I don't know that film.
It's on. Actually, it's on Showtime, Amazon Prime right now. Or you could see it on Sling or Fubo. But it was Rance's last film, and he just loved Rance. He just thought he was the greatest person. He just fell in love with him. And if I'm not mistaken,
in his career he did the Bruce Dern film Nebraska, and I enjoyed seeing him in that.
Yeah.
Usually he had smallish parts. He was always a member of an ensemble. He rarely had parts where he stood out, but he was respected.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Well, and I think it was good that his last film that he did was the one Michael Worth did with him, because he really was the star of that film.
Yeah.
Or
really?
one of the stars. So.
Yeah.
Oh, well, then that makes it something I would like to check out.
I think Clint's in it, too. Isn't Clint
I believe Clint is in it, yes.
Yeah.
And one thing you may not remember or may not realize is Jean was also an actress and was also apparently quite good, but kind of retired as she was raising the kids. But she has a great part in Apollo 13. She has a really good part, and she really campaigned for that, and Rance really campaigned for her to get that role. She played Jim Lovell's mother. His grandmother.
Wow.
When he's, out in space, and it looks like the craft is in danger, and they say, "Oh, we better tell Grandma what's going on." So they go to Jean, and she looks like a little old lady. She looks probably older than she was. Her hair went white at a very early age, and when Ron said, "I can't cast you in this, I know you want it, but you just don't look old enough," and she said, "Well, I'll take my teeth out for this part." So she removed, I guess she had dentures. Wow. I trust she had dentures. And in her role is this one scene where they come to her and they say, "We're really scared. He's up there and we just don't know if he's going to come back." And she said, "Well, don't you worry." She said, "If they could get a washing machine to fly, my Jimmy could fly it." And
that
is a great moment.
Scene,
they used it in some of the trailers. It was her big moment to shine.
Aww. I'll tell you what, if she was I'd be worn out if I was her. Between Rance and Clint and Ron Adams and the whole family and all the grandkids, I'd just be worn out just being mom and grandma.
Yeah, well, she loved that. Making doll clothes was one of her favorite things. But she had health problems, and she died somewhat, I don't want to say young, but youngish, younger,
Yeah. Oh.
That's too bad.
Mm-hmm.
It is. She seemed like she was a wonderful person. That's the thing about that family is, they were from Oklahoma. That's where they met, and lived in New York briefly, and then moved to California, moved to Burbank, which is kind of a workaday area with a lot of movie studios in it, but a lot of average people too, and the PTA and Little League and all those things that people have growing up in what we think of as a middle America kind of life, they did. In fact, they insisted on it. They insisted that, yes, Ron could be one of the stars of the Andy Griffith Show, but he could not be required to miss any of his Little League games. And and the parents were always, someone was the team mom and someone was, the coach of, they did all that stuff. They were really members of the community. I've met people who were friends of theirs, and there were no Hollywood airs about that family.
Did Ron Howard go to regular school, or wouldn't he?
Yes.
Really?
Yes, he did.
How could he do that when he was doing the Andy Griffith Show?
Well, there are always, at least in California, there are ways where you could be out of school a certain amount of time with on-set tutors, but he was always under the umbrella of the Burbank school system.
Oh.
Went all the way through school in Burbank, graduated from, that's where he met his wife to be in class at, it's called John Burroughs High School in Burbank. And one of the people that I chased down for that book was a teacher from that school who got to know the family quite well.
Well, did Ron want to be an actor when he was a little tiny kid, or were they the ones pushing him to do it?
Okay. Well, he counted his first role as being a baby in arms, but he said he didn't get paid for it, so it didn't count. But his father, this is when they were living in New York, his father auditioned for a part in a movie called The Journey with Deborah Carr and Yul Brynner. This was after King and I, but obviously it was reuniting two people who had been very impressive on screen together. And I don't remember how it all worked out, but it's all this group of people who are kind of stuck in Eastern Europe, and Yul Brynner is a rather scary Russian commander who for some reason is keeping these people, this American group of people, and amongst them is a small family. I remember Ann Jackson is the wife, another well-known character actor is the husband, and while Rance was auditioning, it came up that they needed a little boy, part of that family unit. And he said, well, my son, we like to get up at parties, and they had a scene they used to like to do, a scene from Mr. Roberts, which Rance had been in. So, Ron Howard gets up there and he does his little scene from Mr. Roberts playing the Jack Lemmon part and some Pulver, and he gets this role. So he was, and the role got him and his family a trip to Vienna, where the film was shot.
Wow.
So that was pretty neat, and he, and they said, well, it's good money, we'll bank it for him from college. If he doesn't like it, he doesn't ever have to do it again. But of course, he loved it. He thought it was the greatest fun, and the cast all sort of adopted him, and and pretty soon he was going on little auditions. He got the Andy Griffith Show when he was about 5, and I think he loved every bit of it.
Wow, that's amazing.
That is, and and so many child actors went on to become, felons.
It's like that, yes.
It's really great that Ron he didn't.
And the family, his family, it sounds like, kept him centered. And
I think that's what it was, because to me it doesn't sound like a lot of child actors. Part of the reason they ended up the way they were is, to their family, a lot of them were just a money-making machine.
True.
And, and to me it sounds like Ron Howard's family was all about the family, and it's just their business happened to be acting and making movies and making TV.
That is really true, and a lot of the credit certainly does go to the parents. But I had a very interesting phone conversation with Shirley Jones, who actually played Ron Howard's sister in The Music Man, and his surrogate mother, let's say, in The Courtship of Eddie's Father. So they were in 2 different films together. So she knew the family pretty well. And somehow the subject of Ron's younger brother Clint came up. And to her, it was, on the one hand, she had the greatest respect for the family, the greatest respect for Ron, but could also see that even if no one intends it, being the other kid encourages misbehavior, something like that. Just, plus given Clint's just ingrained personality, but also because she said she had been through the same thing with her children and stepchildren, and some of them were very successful, and there was one who was absolutely not, and who had major problems, and partly because everybody else was doing such glamorous things.
Yeah, that would be hard.
It would be. And, you always, if you have an older sibling, you may be, judged against them.
Oh,
because
definitely.
No matter what you want to do, they probably got there first.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so you want to be an actor? Well, look at your brother Ron. He's doing great.
He did have some successes. He had a show called Gentle Ben, which did rather well. So he wasn't without success. But certainly not on the same level.
Yeah.
And I'm going to say this, no matter what Ron Howard has done, he has never been a psychotic ice cream truck driver like Clint Howard was in Ice Cream Man. So I'm just going to say, Clint's got his accomplishments too.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah,
that's right. Are you aware that Clint, for a while there, some years back on the internet, had his own show? It was the most bizarre show. I think it was just called the Clint Howard Show, but where they took a lot of pot shots at Ron. It was things like people juggling chainsaws and cutting off arms and legs and stuff. It wasn't your everyday fun excursion, but he seems to have a taste of the macabre, shall we say. And everyone, Ron, who shows up in the last episode and gets kind of dumped on by everybody, seems to be okay with that.
Wow. Well, how did Ron end up with Happy Days? How did he go from Andy Griffith's show to Happy Days?
Well, there was a space in there. There is a very tough time for child actors when suddenly they're not as cute as they used to be, and when you could probably hire someone a little older who's maybe even a better actor, who's over 18 and therefore costs a lot less, because there are rules and laws about what you are required to do for child actors. Their time on the set is limited. They need, teachers and minders it's a lot better to get that 18-year-old to play 16 like an actual 16-year-old. What is happening?
We lost Nick for a second there.
Hi, Mary.
Hi.
Hi, Beverly. What you're seeing is the results of me staying in a hotel and using really crappy internet service. So, congratulations, crappy internet. And I was rolling along.
Okay.
One tower been in.
So Ron went through a bad period when he was really kind of depressed. He was just an ordinary high school kid. He wasn't getting parts, and he wasn't as adorable as he used to be. And he kind of was thinking about moving on. He got interested in journalism. He got interested in basketball. High school, and meeting Cheryl in high school, and so he had other things to do. But Happy Days came along. Well, there was an early version of Happy Days was somehow connected with one of those anthology shows called Love American Style.
Yeah.
So they made a kind of an early pilot for Happy Days, and he was on that. And then he got American Graffiti, which was a really big coup for him.
Yeah.
It was a kind of filmmaking that he was excited about, by a young filmmaker filming in a very realistic, very naturalistic way, and he was interested in the process of filmmaking, and he was away from home. And so he I think, got reanimated by the excitement of filmmaking and was starting to prepare to go to USC Film School. And what helped him to get the part was that they had seen this Happy Days trailer. But then after American Graffiti did really, really well, then they decided to actually make Happy Days. So that's when the whole process put together. And of course, it wasn't known in those early days of the series that the breakout star was going to be Fonzie. That was a surprise to everyone.
Yeah. Oh, I remember that. Yeah, because he did Happy Days and Fonz and the Happy Days gang. And
yeah, but Ron Howard was exactly the right age to be playing that kind of just getting out of high school kid. And he was, that's who he was.
Yeah. And it fit his kind of, because he was so sweet when he was Opie, and he was kind of sweet in Happy Days too, so it kind of fit.
Although, there was some, I don't want to say friction exactly, but some disappointment on his part as Henry Winkler's star rose, because, Ron's supposed to be the star of the series, and here's this other person that everyone's real excited about. And I think for the first time he felt a little upstaged, but they worked it out and they became the closest of friends.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
well,
and in fact, this is very sweet. They got, the show was so popular all over the world, they got together a softball team. And they actually toured and did kind of charity appearances and, played games. And
wow.
And years later, they had a reunion, which I was able to go to, which was really neat, where they got together for sort of a reunion softball game before they did this televised reunion show.
Wow. Well, that's good. I was just telling Nick before we even started the cast, I was really shocked at how many movies Ron Howard has made in his life. Really, really good movies, huge movies that I loved. And for some reason, I did not know Ron Howard had been the director in them. I didn't know he was Willow. I didn't know he did Willow.
Oh, yes.
And Night Shift. I didn't realize.
Night Shift was his first kind of biggish movie. That was right before Splash. And Splash was really important in his career and in Tom Hanks's career.
Yeah, see, I didn't realize he had done that movie.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Well, that's what he was first given credit for in terms of, moving beyond Corman and a few TV things and doing, the big screen movies. And Splash was the first really big hit.
Okay.
But the feeling was, Ron Howard, he can do comedy. But Ron, for all of his kind of mild-mannered ways, is a very ambitious guy, and he wanted to do it all. He wanted to do things that were out of his comfort zone. Mm-hmm. So, eventually he was doing, some better than others, but, intensely dramatic movies and epic movies and Apollo 13 and, of course, A Beautiful Mind, and then some very adventuresome movies, Frost Nixon, a lot of documentaries recently, the Dan Brown stuff, which I don't particularly enjoy, but those big sort of convoluted...
The Da Vinci Code.
Da Vinci Code, right.
Yeah. And Angels and Demons.
Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't realize he had done this. It's weird.
Yeah. Yeah. And continues to do it. He had visions, he said once, of being an old man like John Huston directing in a wheelchair.
Wow.
Let us hope.
That's great.
Well, I was going to say, he's showing no signs of slowing down. I don't think all of his movies have been as successful as they might have been, but he's, I think he certainly had some artistic flops as well as box office flops, but he's doing what he wants to do.
Mm-hmm. Excuse me. Okay, Joe Dante did the editing in this movie, Grand Theft Auto. Did you meet him at all while you were working?
Oh, I knew Joe. Joe's a friend. Joe is someone I knew from the 70s when he was basically the Roger Corman editor and trailer cutter. And I'll tell you my favorite Joe Dante story. He was a very quiet, mousy guy, still doesn't drive.
Wow.
After all these years of living in LA, it's pretty amazing. But very mild-mannered, very sweet. He and Alan Arkish doing a lot of this editing stuff, and one day he gets the opportunity to direct Piranha. And he realized, because he's no fool, that the way the personality he projects is not exactly what a director should be. He needs to command authority. He's like the general, right?
Yeah.
And Joe Dante is nobody's idea of a general. So he said, I decided I needed a new personality. And thanks to Roger and him moving me forward, I discovered there was a personality that I was capable of that I didn't know that I had. And these days, Joe is he's still a nice guy, but he is a talker and can talk very smartly and passionately and philosophically, and absolutely see him as a leader. But he gives Roger credit for that, for having discovered in him some qualities that he didn't know were there.
Oh, that's great.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I just love the fact that you've got so many, and this is a Roger Corman thing, but you just have so many amazingly talented filmmakers that came out of the Roger Corman boot camp of making these movies. And I've recently, like I said, I've been watching a lot of 70s films recently because I'm working on a book about some of my favorite movies from the 70s, and one of them was Piranha. And of course, Joe Dante directed that one, and we were talking about it earlier with Paul Bartel, but it's just shocking to me how many of these people started with Corman. Or got their directorial / editor role, whatever, with Roger Corman on his films.
Yeah.
And one of the things I think is important, it's obvious that there's a Coppola, there's a Scorsese, there's a Bogdanovich, there's all these directors, James Cameron years later, and even some kind of ones who've done well in slightly smaller surroundings. But so many editors, so many post-production people, so many casting directors. Like I was watching Mad Men, which I finally got to see all of, and every week I would see the credit for the casting director for Mad Men, someone I worked with for Roger. And people who didn't have those skills when they came to him, he just, they were a bright young person from Stanford or UCLA or wherever they were from, and he just gave them
a chance,
incentive, and an opportunity.
Yeah.
And depending on how well they've done, they're either extraordinarily grateful to him or not so happy.
But either way, they still have to. They have to say Roger Corman gave them a start. So
that's right. That's right. It's the way in.
How did Ron get away with not getting permits for the scenes in Vegas? Did he know that? Was he just a young director and he did it, or?
I think there was a lot of that on Corman movies.
Oh, okay.
I was going to say, Mary, that was not something this was a Roger Corman production, and permits were something you got if it was convenient.
Yeah, exactly.
Permits mean fire marshals there, stuff like that. It gets really expensive when you have permits in California. So,
well, they did blow a lot of stuff up in this movie.
Yeah, once Roger's brother Gene Corman, the late Gene Corman, was making a movie called Darktown Brothers, and it was like most of their movies in that era was being filmed, on the streets of L.A. And so they had a character who was supposed to have robbed a bank, was running out of the bank with the loot, and what went on inside the bank probably had permits, but here they're rushing out of the bank, jumping into the car, running down the street. Some completely innocent passerby gets in the middle of this, and there's a car crack up, and they get the footage.
Wow. That's amazing.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, Mary, do you have any other questions for Beverly at this point?
Yeah, I think I'm fading fast, so I'd be happy to answer one or two more, but
I was going to say,
turn to real life.
I was going to say, I think we've beaten poor Beverly to death right now.
I know. I'm sorry.
It's okay. It's funny because you asked all the questions I was going to, and then a few more. So I've just gotten to sit back and enjoy the show. Which, by the way, is totally fine. Why don't we go ahead and do the plot, and then we'll do some feedback and get out of here.
It sounds good to me.
All right. So, and
Beverly can have a break.
Yeah. I'll listen to the plot, and then I think I'm going to disappear into the great beyond.
I was going to say, okay, we'll hold up for just a second. Beverly, if you'd like, you can go ahead and excuse yourself out. It's fine. I'm going to cut this little bit where we're talking right now out.
Okay.
And so what we'll do is, if you'd like, I mean, if you want to hang around while I just talk about what happened in the movie and give a bunch of spoilers, then
I'd like to hear you describe it, and then I think I will go and
okay. So
turn to the living.
Okay, I'm going to give us about a 5-second silent period here, so I'll know where it was just for when I'm editing this. So
and I want to thank both of you. You were a lot of fun to talk to.
Oh, I want to thank you. I love your stories. They're just so wonderful.
By the way,
and
Mary,
I'll get a copy of this at some point, right?
Well,
oh yeah, for sure. And by the way, I think, Mary, we're going to have to do Candy Stripe Nurses with Beverly and Alan. Is it Holzman? Yeah.
Alan Holzman. Yeah. That would be fun.
Okay, so I think about now we'll go ahead and roll into the plot of Grand Theft Auto, which, by the way, spoiler alert, there are a lot of cars stolen in this movie. And second spoiler alert, is that I am going to probably give away every daggone thing in the film. So what you're going to do right now, gentle listener, is you're going to either decide to let me spoil the film for you, or you're going to go out and pick up a copy of it. There is a really good DVD 25th anniversary edition that is available on...
Thank you,
sorry?
Nick. Thank you, Nick.
What?
You sent it to me. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome, Mary. Well, I was like, oh, good Lord, Mary's never going to be able to figure out how to watch this movie. So I just, yeah. And it's funny because I did pick up a copy for Mary and I sent it to her, and I picked up a copy for myself. And I realized that, this movie, I'm going to say this 25th anniversary edition for a movie made in 1977. So we're talking, this is a 19-year-old 25th anniversary edition. So we're about to the 20th anniversary of the 25th anniversary edition. And so I'm going to guess it doesn't sell a lot of copies right now.
Yeah.
And so I was joking with Fiona that there was probably a 2,000% spike in sales on it just from me buying 2 copies recently. But that's okay. Because you know what? This is the thing. Grand Theft Auto is just a fun movie.
Yes.
There's not a lot of pretentious to it. It's a mad world. Meets Evil Knievel.
Mm-hmm.
And I will also say that while I love It's a mad world, I find the ending to actually be a little bit depressing.
Mm-hmm.
And I do not find the ending of this film to be at all depressing.
No.
Especially since I'm not a huge fan of Rolls Royces anyhow.
No.
And, but that is one of the unique things in this. The whole movie's a car chase where the lead car is a Rolls Royce.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think anybody'd ever done that. So kudos to Corman for that.
I'll give a shout out to Joey Chitwood and his thrill show because they were the stunt drivers.
Yeah, and they did do an amazing job.
Yeah.
I mean, they wrecked so many cars. Everyone who's watching this, please go back to the start of the cast and play Mary's drinking game while you're watching it. But I am going to request that you do so take your car keys and put them somewhere really, really safe, like behind a combination lock so you can't open it when you're drunk and you think it'd be a good idea to go out and do some of the things you see in this movie. Because nothing you see in this movie is a good idea.
No.
Okay, just period. Except maybe, having a little conversation with your future spouse about whether you're just getting married to piss off her father or not. So, okay. So anyhow, we got this movie, and you got these 2 kids, and one of them is Sam Freeman, and he's played by Ron Howard, and the other is Paula Powers, played by Nancy Morgan, and they're going to get married. They're going to go to Las Vegas and get married. Okay, and this was the silly thing. When you go to Vegas to get married, you are generally eloping. You're generally just taking off to get married. But Paula thought it would be a dandy idea to stop off at her parents' house and tell them about it. Okay, and I'm going to say, when your parents are Big B Powers, the guy who wants to be governor, and that's just not a good idea. So needless to say, Big B and Priscilla Powers, her parents, played by Barry Cahill and Elizabeth Rogers, needless to say, they're not thrilled. As a matter of fact, they flat out refuse, and they start really bossing, poor Paula around. And I think it's funny watching Fiona when we were watching the film, because Fiona gets really annoyed with that sort of thing, and I thought she was going to jump through the TV and strangle them as they're, basically they're forbidding their daughter, who is of legal age, by the way. I want to make that very clear. She was of legal age in college from marrying this guy, Sam Freeman, because, as they put it, he's just a gold digger. He's looking to marry her for her money, and they're going to cut her off from her money, and she doesn't care because she's young enough not to care about money. She'll care later, but that's beside the point.
Oh, and she's engaged, too.
Well, okay, she is sort of engaged.
They engaged her.
Well, that's it. And, I mean, what is this? The 17th century called and they want their, marriage practices back. I mean, gee whiz. So apparently she was betrothed to Collins Hedgeworth. And Collins Hedgeworth, played by Paul Linke, who folks may remember, he was in Chips. So you had Ponch and John, and then you had that guy that was always occasionally showing up on the motorcycle when they needed a third guy. Oh. Well, he was the third guy.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's one of the places you might have known him. But she is betrothed to Collins. And one of the things I like about the film is he was off to play polo when, Priscilla Powers gets the call from Collins invite Paula to come watch him play polo, and he finds out that she's run off with Sam, and so he immediately takes off in his car in his polo outfit. And so he spends the whole movie running around in this ridiculously tight pair of white pants with these boots and his little helmet and his red shirt. It's adorably stupid, and I love it. But anyway, so in case you didn't figure it out, Paula is going to run off with Sam to get married. Now, her dad, Bigby, he takes the car keys away from her. Even though she bought the car, she saved up for it and bought it. So really, if you think about it, anybody who committed Grand Theft Auto, the first one was Bigby Powers stole his daughter's car because he took the keys. But that's okay, because his daughter is apparently impressive as hell, like a pit crew impressive, because she goes out to the car, pops the hood, and starts to do something to it, and then the camera cuts away, and then you see her get into her dad's Rolls Royce and drive off. And she's told Sam to wait down by the curb, and she'll pick him up. Well, she picks him up in the Rolls Royce, and they go driving off. Well, Dad finds out, and he goes running out, and she has somehow or other, in like less than 2 minutes, put the car up on blocks and taken the tires off of it. And I'm just like, what? Because I thought she stole the alternator or something.
I know.
Or stole the ignition plugs. But no, she put the car up on blocks. So kudos to her. Kudos to Paula, because I think she can make a living as an auto mechanic if she was able to do that.
Yeah.
But anyway, so at this point, you've got Collins Hedgeworth chasing them, and he catches up to them, and Bigby has said that, she's been kidnapped, and so he thinks she's being kidnapped, and there's this really weird scene where Collins slides over from the driver's seat to the passenger seat while driving the car to have a conversation with Paula. And needless to say, that does not go well for him with the car. And by the way, at this point, he's in his first of a series of stolen vehicles that he's using to pursue her.
Well,
go ahead.
That was his second one when he was talking to her.
Well, which one was the second one, Mary?
The second one was the Charger that he got out of the...
Oh, yeah, because he stole a Dodge Charger, which, by the way, was he stole the car that the Dukes of Hazzard would use later, basically. And so he had this big muscle car and was going after him, and he just does not know how to treat cars. That's all there is to it.
That was already his second car.
Yeah, and, he goes through cars like nobody's business, but... He gets up, calls the 10Q radio station, and gets on the air with DJ Curly Q Brown. That's the real Don Steele. And he says he's going to offer a $25,000 reward for anyone who can catch and detain Paula and Sam. So basically, he's basically looking for kidnapping money. He wants somebody to kidnap them and hold them till he gets there. So, I mean, good Lord, the felonies are just racking up here. And, by the way, at this point, Paula and Sam, for the record, have done little or nothing illegal. And one of the key points I noted, we talk about the fact that Paula's driving the car for most of the movie, and I think that's story-wise important, but also just in the fact that definitely sets it up that Sam never stole the car. It was never Sam that took anybody on some kind of chase.
Yeah.
It was Paula that started the whole thing out. But anyway, going back to this, so this motley crew of different people, including a preacher, including a couple of down on their luck auto mechanics, one of them played by Clint Howard, by the way, and a bunch of other people just hear, DJ Curly Q Brown talking about this $25,000 reward and decide that this is their ticket to, Easy Street. So they're going to go out and try and catch this Rolls Royce. Well, meanwhile, Colin's mom, played by Marion Ross, and her name's Vivian, she offers a $25,000 reward for the safe return of her son, who she feels has just sort of gone a little crazy. He's having one of his moments, and they just need to help her get him back. And so she steals a car and actually ends up with a police officer chasing her, and the cop is in a bus full of little old ladies and men because a preacher steals the cop car while the cop is trying to arrest Vivian, because Vivian actually didn't take her car. She took her butler's car, and her butler reported it stolen because he didn't see it was his boss driving it when it rode off. So I think at this point we're probably 6 or 7 stolen vehicles in, and bear in mind the movie takes place over about 6 hours. Because they are just driving from L.A. to Las Vegas. They're not this isn't the Cannonball Run. They're not going across country. But, so, anyway, Bigby, while all this is going on, Bigby has called his mafioso fixer, and that's Mr. Slinker. And Mr. Slinker, by the way, is played by Rance Howard. And Mr. Slinker sets up his... what did he call it? The Velvet Net. And the Velvet Net were these 3 mafioso-looking guys driving used police cars or whatever, and something that was eminently wreckable, let's put it that way. And they chase them into the desert, and you get to see this Rolls Royce go bouncing across the California desert. That's kind of fun. And I will say that they put a Rolls Royce through more just terrible things than I have ever seen a Rolls Royce put through in a film, including at one point making it go up on 2 wheels and do that little trick where you drive on your side on 2 wheels. So
there were 3 of them.
Well, yeah, there were 3 of them, but in the movie there was just one, supposedly, right? Oh, and by the way, I forgot to mention my favorite part. This film, the Rolls Royce had a car phone.
Yeah.
And the car phone was just a giant black telephone. It was so awesome. And I'm imagining that the entire back end of that Rolls Royce was nothing but a battery to power this phone. Because it was just like this big, I bet it had a rotary dial. They never showed the dial, but I bet it did, because it was just huge. And also, by the way, Paula probably bankrupted her father, because I think back in 1977 to make a mobile phone call would be about $5,000 a minute or something. But anyway, and remember, Bigby is planning to run for governor, and yet here, this car chase across California and Nevada with his daughter is now like big news in the area, and the police are involved. But again, Bigby never called the cops on his daughter. He didn't want them involved. So the cops got involved because of Colin's mom and the whole thing with her stealing the car and then the cop having to chase her. So I'm not going to try and describe all the wacky car chase antics that occurred.
And the 2 helicopters, you forgot those.
Well, yeah, I was going to say there's 2. Well, there's one helicopter is Slinker's. He's got his eye in the sky following them, but the other one, eventually, Curly Q Brown, the real Don Steele, decides that this is radio disc jockey gold. Having these 2 young lovers running across country, and he can't just wait for people to call in with reports of where they are. He actually gets the 10Q copter and puts it in the air so he can so he can follow the lovers. And they have this interesting conversation on the phone between Ron Howard and him, where basically he says, look, man, do what you need to do, but quit telling people where we're at. And Curly's just like, sorry, man, I got to do it because it's good radio. And if you wreck, I'm going to describe every moment of it. That's like, whoa, you're kind of a dick. But that's okay, because he's the real Don Steele in real life, so you got to love him. But anyway, so they're having the car chase. They've got helicopters. They've got everybody and their uncle, and somehow they end up accidentally being pushed into a demolition derby. And so they get chased into the demolition derby by all these people that are pursuing them. And, of course, the folks in the demolition derby are super excited because this is the first time a Rolls-Royce has ever been in a demolition derby. And madness and mayhem just ensue from there. There are a ton of really good car chase scenes. There are a ton of excellent wrecks. And I have never seen a Rolls-Royce get T-boned and destroyed by demolition derby cars until this movie. So this is not a high art movie. Okay, we're not here for Citizen Kane. We're not here for the deep plot. What we're here for is car chases and humor. And this movie delivers all of those in buckets.
But it does have a storyline, and it does slow down a couple places so you can follow the story.
It does. It slows down a little bit, lets the audience catch its breath.
Yeah.
And one of the things I like is if you watch the trailer, Ron Howard says in the trailer, he says, what this movie really is a love story. And about the time the words love story get out of his mouth, the chair that he was sitting in a moment before gets run over by a car. But that sums up the movie. It is a love story at its heart, but really it's a car chase movie. And it boggles my mind that they were able to film this in 15 production days.
I know.
I mean, wow. They
did the whole demolition derby in one day.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing, and think about this. I know they had several Rolls Royces that they could use to film this, but Rolls Royces are not cheap. So, you need to get the destruction of the Rolls Royce in 1 or 2 takes because I don't think you're going to be able to go back for it. But I'm not going to give away whether or not they actually make it to Vegas and get married, because dagnabbit, we need to have some surprise left. But Mary, you want to give it away?
Yeah, I always give it away, accidentally usually.
Okay, Mary, do they make it to Vegas and get married?
Yes.
Okay, well, congratulations. Okay, folks. Instead of purchasing the 25th anniversary edition, just send your check or money order to Mary, and we'll be good.
That was the best part of the movie. It had a good ending.
It did have a good ending. As I said, it ended on a much more upbeat note than It's a Mad, 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 Mad World, which I kind of consider its spiritual grandparent, as it were.
Yeah.
And again, this was the directorial debut of Ron Howard, and an impressive directorial debut it was, because again, it wasn't Citizen Kane, but the film worked. It was tight. It was well made. You did not get bored. There was just enough character development to give you empathy, but not enough character development to make you really question your life choices.
Yes.
So I think a really decent flick, and I think it gets a raw deal on Rotten Tomatoes, by the way, where it only gets 23%. Yeah. I'm sorry, Rotten Tomatoes, but you need to listen to some real humans who watch movies on occasion. Okay, that's all I got to say. By the way, for the record, Rotten Tomatoes had 2 movies that had 100% on them. One of them was Citizen Kane, and that movie, they found an old review from somebody that didn't like Orson Welles, and so it knocked Citizen Kane out of the top position on Rotten Tomatoes What is the number one movie in the world according to critics?
What is it?
Paddington Bear 2.
No.
No.
Yes,
Paddington Bear 2 is the only other movie that had 0 negative reviews according to Rotten Tomatoes. So Paddington Bear 2 is a better film than Citizen Kane. But again, I don't listen to Rotten Tomatoes much anyway because they gave Grand Theft Auto 23%. And I'm sorry, it's a fun movie even if you aren't drinking.
True.
Okay, it's just a fun little movie.
Mm-hmm.
So there you have it. Check out Grand Theft Auto, please. So, hey, Mary, do we have any feedback this week?
Yes, we do. I'm very happy to announce as soon as I find it.
Wow, Mary, did the podcast surprise you today?
Yeah, I'm serious. It's been a long week. And that movie just was so fun.
It was. Wasn't it nice to just watch a fun movie, Mary?
Yes, it really was.
Yeah.
Just
nothing in it but fun.
It's true. It's true. Okay. Our first feedback is from Nicholas Stumpf. He says, hope you're doing well. I intend to record some feedback soon. We're waiting, Nicholas. I've been loving your most recent episodes, especially the Dr. No one. The answer to the contest is Twilight Zone from 1983. Again, this was one of,
this was the previous contest, but you got grandfathered in, Nick.
Yes. And you won something, so congratulations.
Well, that's true. He did.
Yeah. He said he enjoyed this movie, although I know opinions vary on this one. Have you seen it, The Twilight Zone from 1983? I don't know.
I have seen it, and it's an anthology movie, so it's got, a bunch of different stories in it, and some of the stories are really good. Some of them are not as good. It is notable because they did a remake of the William Shatner Twilight Zone episode. I believe it was Terror at 20,000 or 30,000 feet
with the thing on the wing.
And then there was also a story that they did with actor Vic Morrow, and this was the one that was most notable because this is the one where the helicopter crashed during the scene.
Okay.
And killed Vic Morrow and the two children that were acting with him in the scene.
Okay, I remember that now.
Yeah. So that was the, I guess, the controversy behind that film. And if I remember right, and I'm totally doing this from memory, by the way, folks, the original theatrical release of the Twilight Zone movie did not contain the segment that had the crash in it.
Yeah,
and that was added back in later.
Yeah, I think you're right.
So anyway, carry on.
Well, Nicholas, you'll be very happy to know that since you liked the Dr. No episode, that by the end of this month, we're going to be doing another one with Mark Mostyn.
By the end of next month, Mary.
Oh, wait. Okay.
Yeah, we're in May. We're doing that in June.
Oh, that's right. What's that one going to be?
Mary's not used to us having a schedule, folks. So it's been very difficult for her this last couple of episodes because I've actually had them scheduled.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I know. Don't worry, Mary. It won't last.
Okay, this is good. Okay, this next one is from Pete, and he goes on to say, okay, he sent something. He sent a picture of Christopher Lee, and he's in Taste the Blood of Dracula. And he sent this and said, I saw this and had to share. I think it's funny. And it's Christopher Lee on screen on the Taste of Blood of Dracula. And he has a little blip from Variety that says, Christopher Lee can now play Dracula in his sleep, and in this pic looks occasionally as if he's doing so. I went, oh. So then Pete wrote back and said, okay, he sent me a thing from Wikipedia on Christopher Lee. He said, he had read at one time that Christopher Lee quit Hammer because he was paid so little, and I think that was just for one of the films. So he looked up Christopher Lee, and he sent this to me. He said, Lee returned to the role of Dracula in Hammer's Dracula, Prince of Darkness, 1965. Lee's role had no lines. He merely hisses his way through the film. Stories vary as to the reason for this. Lee states he refused to speak the poor dialogue he was given, but screenwriter Jimmy Sangster claims the script did not contain any lines for the character. This film set the standard for most of the Dracula sequels in the sense that half of the film's running time was spent on telling the story of Dracula's resurrection, and the characters' appearances were brief. Lee went on record to state that he was virtually blackmailed by Hammer into starring in the subsequent films. Unable or unwilling to pay him his going rate, they would resort to reminding him about how many people he would put out of work if he did not take the part. He
wow.
said, the process went like this. The telephone would ring and my agent would say, Jimmy Carreras, the president of Hammer Films, was on the phone, and they've got another Dracula for you. And Lee would say, forget it, I don't want to do another one. And then he'd get a call from Jimmy Carreras in a state of hysteria saying, what's this all about? Jim, I don't want to do it, and I don't have to do it. No, you have to do it, I said. And then I'd say, why? And he'd reply, because I've already sold it to an American distributor with you playing the part. Think of all the people you know so well that you will put out of work. Emotional blackmail. That's the only reason I did them. Ooh.
Wow, that's kind of juicy.
Yeah, it is. Damn. Okay. This next one is a voicemail from Mel from Seattle. We haven't heard from him in so long. We miss him.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. This is Mel from Seattle, a voice from the past. I wanted to call in and say hi. Hello, Nick and Juan, and of course, hello, Mary. Just thought I'd call in, and I've been listening to the cast all along. Gosh, it's been a few years, probably 4, 5, something like that. Seems like an eternity. Since the pandemic began, and it's just like life has just totally changed the last few years. I don't know what it is. Anyhow, I listened to the last cast, and only Mary Rotolo could come up with a way of joining a Santo Mexican film with Gamera. Classic Mary Rotolo. Anyway, it was a fun cast. I really enjoyed it. Also, before I forget, I wanted to say hello to all the B-Movie Cast gang. Really appreciated the Facebook. I'm not really a Facebooker, but Ann and I share a Facebook site, which she's primarily on. And I got a couple birthday greetings a few days back from Christopher Page and Matthew Kowalski, and that was really nice. And that's kind of what prompted me to make this voicemail. I promised Mary I would. That was the other reason. In any case, I wanted to say hi to everybody. I miss the old gang. I miss going to the Bash, which, of course, has been canceled for a couple years. So I guess everybody misses going to the Bash at this point. But I wanted to say hi to Christopher and to Matthew and to Tom and Wolfie and, everybody, all the old B-Movie Cast gang. So I guess that's I didn't really have anything too exciting to say. I did have a comment on, I think Tom had indicated in the comment section last time after the movie conversation that he wanted to hear a cast about not Gorgo, but he called it the Behemoth Monster. I forget what he called it, but the movie's actually called, of course, The Giant Behemoth. And I'm amazed if that hasn't been covered. It would seem like Vince would have covered that years ago. But in case he didn't, I would second the nomination. I think that would be a great one for the cast. Of course, the name in America is the Giant Behemoth, which makes no sense because behemoth, it means giant. So in America, they decided that the British word behemoth, wasn't enough because we're kind of not the brightest bulbs in the tree in this country, apparently. So we had to call the movie essentially Giant. That's an interesting little tidbit about that movie. The other thing that's relatively interesting about this, and it's probably fairly common knowledge for most people that watch these kinds of films, that movie was produced, directed by Eugene Laurie, and he actually did a trio of big monster films, the first being The Beast from 20,000 Fathoms. And when that one came out in 1953, it did quite well, and everybody seemed to enjoy it except his daughter, who was just a little girl at the time, and she was quite sad because the monster, or the dinosaur, I guess, was killed at the end of the movie, and he really hadn't done anything wrong. And so, down the road, Eugene Laurie, when he did his third, Behemoth was the second of a trio. The third one was Gorgo, which I've got to think Vince had done Gorgo. But in any case, when he did Gorgo, he kept his daughter in mind and made a more family-friendly ending where, the big Gorgo finds his baby Gorgo and they live happily ever after she comes and rescues him. So that would be an interesting movie to pick. And other than that, don't have a lot else to say. I do want to recommend a couple movies. One from that are kind of a nice, they go well together. Kind of like when I recommended way back when Under the Skin and The Man Who Fell to Earth. Now, Mary, these ones are not going to be controversial like those, so don't worry. I think everybody will enjoy these. The first one is from 1977. It's called Foes, F-O-E-S. And it's available on Blu-ray from, I believe, Garage House Pictures, just a small label. It's a little independent film. And it's basically about a little lonely island off the coast, which is manned. There's only one, there's a lighthouse on the island. And it's manned by a husband and wife. And on one day, aliens show up. And it's one of those really cool, very low budget, really cool, trippy kind of movies to watch late night all alone at, 1 a.m. or so. And I think a lot of B-Movie Cast people may have not heard of it, and they might enjoy it. The other one I want to recommend is a companion piece to that. Came out a year and a half ago, and it's available for free if you have Amazon Prime, and it's The Vast of Night. And that is another really cool movie to watch late at night. It's also about aliens, or is it? Potential aliens. It's set in the 50s, and it's about this this high school girl and this other gentleman who runs the radio station in the small town. It's all about kind of along the lines of if American Graffiti had run into an alien broadcast. And it's a really cool, a nostalgic kind of film. And it's another one that would be great to listen to late at night. And if you haven't seen it, that would be a strong recommendation as well. Hopefully, it won't be another 4 or 5 years before I send another recording. But I did want to say once again, hi to everybody. And I hope everyone is doing well and getting through this coronavirus apocalypse without too much damage. So again, Mel from Seattle saying take care. Goodbye, everybody.
Wow, thanks for getting back into the feedback game, Mel. We really appreciate it. And I think I'm going to say I'm 75% sure we did Gorgo, by the way, on the B-Movie Cast previously. But I'll take a look. Mm-hmm. And definitely doing the Giant, also known as the Giant Behemoth. would be fun for the cast. So we'll take a look at that one too.
Yeah. I love all the stuff he sends in. He has such good suggestions.
Yeah, he has pretty good suggestions and just a decent demeanor. So thanks for the feedback, man.
Great. Okay, this next one is from Don Falcos. He says, I received my new Gorilla double feature, and I'm sitting down to watch The White Gorilla. Thanks to you, Nick, for the always excellent podcast, and thanks for the wonderful person who donated the DVD, whoever that was. I'm always so excited to have won a prize, I can never remember who donated it. And I wrote back and said, thank you. And it was Brenda McNeil that donated that movie. And he wrote back and said, I've just finished watching both movies. In my opinion, neither of these could be considered a good movie, but each is a must-see for anyone who's a fan of gorilla suit movies. Bela Lugosi meets a Brooklyn gorilla, known on this DVD as The Boys from Brooklyn, is a 1952 film intended as a comedy. It is indeed kind of fun as long as you can get past the second or maybe third-rate Dean Martin, Jerry Lewis impersonators. The acting all around is subpar, except, of course, for Bella. He's great. Oddly, though, for some reason, his credit is cut from the opening titles. Ray Corrigan, who is uncredited, plays one of the two gorillas in the movie. The other title on the disc is The White Gorilla from 1945. Oh boy, this one left a lot to be desired. Corrigan played the titular White Gorilla. He also played the lead human in the film, as well as providing narration. A short way into the film, I recognized Frank Merrill. I know him from Tarzan the Tiger, a silent serial from 1929. And since I always believed Tarzan the Tiger was his final screen appearance, it didn't make sense that he was in a film from 1945. As it turns out, The White Gorilla, which is barely an hour long, draws something like 3/4 of its footage from Perils of the Jungle, a silent serial from 1927. This accounts for the need to have narration throughout, very awkward narration at that. Despite everything, the film is still worth a look, if only to watch Ray Corrigan do his gorilla work, or if you're like me, to see Frank Merrill in clips from a serial that is now considered lost. Aww. Well, thank you, Don, for the feedback. That was great.
Yeah, that was cool.
Yeah. And the last one is a quick note from Steve Turek. It says, Hi, Mary. Would the contest answer be the car in 1977? Also, when are you going to relent on the witchcraft or voodoo that you're using and do the Xanadu episode?
Good night.
I know that you're using spells from the Darkhold, and this can only lead to trouble.
I gotta say that I have felt that the cast is cursed. Because the last two co-hosts I've had lined up for this, because I've been looking for some people that have the Xanadu mojo. And unfortunately, the Xanadu mojo seems to include succumbing to your wicked hex. Because, we're still... And, again, everybody, I have a schedule, dagnabbit. And we missed the window, and now I've got to try and figure out how to fit this in. And it's coming, I promise. Because we're holding a bunch of feedback, if nothing else, that we got specifically for the Xanadu cast.
I know. Now you know why I'm so confused.
What? Why are you confused, Mary?
Holding back things, rescheduling things. It's.
Oh, I just thought it was because you drank so much during Grand Theft Auto.
That too.
Well, there's that.
There is that. Okay. Steve goes on to say, P.S. Why am I suddenly experiencing pain in my side? Oh, no, Mary, please forgive me. You can do Xanadu anytime you want. Just stop the pain.
Cute. Mary, put the Steve Turek voodoo doll away.
Yeah, I will. I will lift the curse on Xanadu. I promise.
Rage.
Right. Well, that's it for the feedback and the end of this podcast.
All right. Well, it was a good episode. We had to let Beverly go a little bit early because, California and all that stuff. She had some hippies to go I don't know,
party
talk
with.
to. I don't know. It's California. I don't know what's going on out there, man.
Well, she put in her time, believe me. Wow, all those stories are wonderful.
Yeah, no, she has some great stories. And again, folks, check out her books.
Yes.
And Beverly in Hollywoodland, or I can't remember what it's called, but our blog, I will post a link.
Okay. I'll remind him.
By the way, for our last co-host, Casey, I actually forgot to post the links to her stuff, so I had to go back and repost them, so they're there. So please go and check out Casey's stuff, too, from the last podcast.
Yes. Sounds good. And now, I'm going to go have another drink and go to sleep.
Well, wow, that's... Okay, well, I guess I'm going to go and get ready for bed because I have to get up and fly out of Texas tomorrow morning really early yet again.
Yeah. Oh, give Loki a hug from me. After
I will. For those who don't know, Loki had to have a little bit of surgery today. Loki is our new dog, not Thor's brother. And Loki had to have a couple of teeth removed because they were growing in crooked. Yeah. And they have taken care of that, and he is doing very well, according to Fiona.
Yeah.
And my one regret is that the surgery was scheduled, and then I ended up having to go to Texas. So I wasn't there for my little doggy when he went in for surgery.
Aww.
So
he'll be happy.
But he's doing okay.
Yeah.
So
cool.
All right. Well,
thank
what I
you
can
so
also
much.
say is
thank you.
Yes,
my
thank you.
pleasure. Let's do it again sometime.
Let's do it again. And I got to say to all the listeners, please go out and check out Beverly's blog.
Yes.
And check out Beverly's books, too.
Yes.
Because she's an amazing writer, and it's a real treat to get to check out some of her work. So please do so.
True. Yes.
Okay? And thank you for joining us, Beverly.
Thank you, and good night.
Well, thanks again, Mary, and thanks to all the listeners.
Yep. Till next time.
All right. Keep your nose in the wind and your tail to yourself. Bye, Mary.
Bye, Nick.
Adios, Mafia.
Well, they've gone.
For good, Joe?
No, just for now. It wasn't the right time for us to meet. But there'll be other nights, other stars for us to watch. They'll be back.
The ghosts are moving tonight, restless, hungry.
All right, fellas, here's your story.
Greetings, my friend. We are all interested in the future, for that is where you and I are going to spend the rest of our lives. And we cannot keep this a secret any longer.
Wait, Captain. I have found evidence of intelligent beings on this planet.
Look to the skies. It's the B-Movie Cookbook. Menus inspired by 15 of your favorite B-movies from the 1950s. With teenage werewolves, blobs, and enough cheese for everyone.
When we return to our planet, the High Court may well sentence you to torture.
But until then, we've got Ed Wood and Vincent Price.
There'll be food and drink and ghosts, and perhaps even a few murders. You're all invited.
So impress your friends with dinner and a movie. With the B-Movie Cookbook, we've got you covered. Get your copy today at bmoviecookbook.com. That's bmoviecookbook.com.
Let me see that book. I am interested to see what sways your mind so heavily.
Sure thing. Just visit bmoviecookbook.com.
Anybody around here want some coffee?
Transmission.
The good guys always win. Even in the 80s.